Bladestorm, Fantasy Miniatures Gaming in a Dark, Chaotic World. This is from Iron Crown Enterprises, published in 1990, and it is, as most games were back then, a boxed set. Now, this box set, although it says it's a miniatures game, if you flip it over, you look on the back, it says Miniatures Not Included. They did make a line of Grenadier miniatures, which I think are still available. And for those of you who are interested after watching this video and picking up a copy of this yourself, I spent $35 on this shrink-wrapped, for what that's worth, eBay copy, $35 including shipping. But there is a second edition of this game that turns it into a little bit more of a role-playing game. It includes a number of player classes. I'm not going to be reviewing that, but that might be an easier way to get your hand on Bladestorm here in the year of our Lord 2025. This is going to be an introduction, a bit of an unboxing, just because I wanted to show you that it's legit. I got the shrink wrap. But before we get to that, let me just turn the clock back to those halcyon days of 1990, before the culture had been jammed, when decades looked different from one decade to the next. And this comes right at about the same time as, unless I'm mistaken, I think second edition Warhammer Fantasy Battles. And it was a time in the hobby when everyone they felt like they'd kind of finally sorted out the division between miniature games and role-playing games, and there was still a lot of experimentation as to how to marry those. People didn't realize that AD&D had already set the gold standard for that. And I think this is, as we'll see later in the video, one of those attempts to bridge the role-playing and miniature wargaming hobbies. I will point out that I was completely mistaken for about 35 years. The mechanics, as we'll see, for Bladestorm are very similar to another game published by Iron Crown Enterprises that you may have heard of, Silent Death. I'm not going to spoil what those mechanics are, but I originally played Silent Death at Gen Con in 1991, and then encountered this after the fact and thought, oh, cool, they use those mechanics for... No, they didn't reskin Silent Death. I think the mechanics might work a little better for a science fiction fighter game, but I haven't played this, so I hesitate to make any strong opinions or tell you how this game plays until we get it on the table. And of course, that will be coming up here in the future. So without further ado, let's go ahead and just take the wrapper off of this. I probably should have gotten my pocket knife before I got to this point. I'll be right back. I don't carry my everyday carry around the house, so it was over on the over in the orange dish, the little ceramic dish that your kid makes in 5th grade, and then 20 years later you're still doing it. So let's talk about this a little bit more. Remember that if you sell a rule set, then you can sell one thing. But if you sell an entire world, then you can sell lots of things, and you can continue to expand and flesh out that world. And for those of you that were not around back in the 80s, Iron Crown Enterprises, they were one of the original licensees of Middle-earth. They had Middle-earth role-playing, and they also made a game called Rolemaster, sometimes called Chartmaster. And the world of Rolemaster is actually the same as the world of Bladestorm. We'll see here in a minute when we start to explore that world. Oh, look at that. Of course, it's a box set. It's got to come with dice. This game, as you can see, uses D6, D10s of various colors. We'll get to that in a minute. So what do we have in the box? We got a rule book, we got a source book, and here's the source of the subscription model. Once you buy into the source book, then they can keep selling you stuff. That's a fine business model. I'm not a businessman, I'm a hobbyist, and this will be about the only box I buy. However, if you're intrigued by the world, if you're intrigued by this, there are places you can go online to find out more. I encourage you to use one of the many search engines to do that. What else do we have in here? We've got the bestiary. Oh, that's good. So we don't have to stat out our own deals. And then we even have a nice little coloring book. So all of the factions in the world that we're going to talk about, they'll actually tell you, paint by numbers. You can just color in your own figures as follows. And the world itself has, as you can see, it's got your kind of orky looking guys. It's got your dwarfy looking guys. It has elves, but it's not your typical Tolkienian. If you wanted that, you had to get Middle-earth role-playing. What else do we got here? So we got a little map of the continent, and it's worth pointing out that this Bladestorm, these maps that we're looking at, are part of a small continent that's way off in the ocean that is part of the official Rolemaster world. that are all written by the same guy who unfortunately passed at a very young age in 2021. We have a nice little, and I may dedicate a full video to this. Again, you saw me open the box. I haven't read all of this stuff. I've just done a little bit of research, and I'm kind of introducing it to myself as I introduce it to you. It's an interesting terrain and painting manual. So this is a really get yourself started. It's got everything you need. So if you're all confused about, how to paint these guys, then you're good to go. We here in the House of Wargaming are experienced, so we don't really need that. And then, of course, I kind of went past this, a scenario book. And there's something like 20 different scenarios in here, some of which are beginner scenarios that use just a simple little cave terrain like this. And we'll look at that again, probably in a different video. For today, I wanted to talk a little bit about this source book here. So you can see the authors are Tim Taylor, Pete Fenlon, and Pete Fenlon is the guy that I was referring to that sadly passed away a little while ago. He wound up publishing more information on the world. It's called the Dark Shadow, the world of Dark Shadow, and it's a little bit different, but he published more throughout the years under various guises. Something called Eidolon Publishing, or is it Eidolon Press? Eidolon is a very popular word. But here we go. So Felen is the continent on which this game is supposed to take place. Of course, it's miniature agnostic, right? When you talk about, let's take a look here. We got sea trolls, okay? And the miniatures for the sea trolls, they have like bird legs for some reason, but it's a troll. A troll is a troll. You can use a troll from any manufacturer. I, of course, will be playing this in 15 millimeter. You may want to use 25 millimeter. But if you wanted to get stuck into the world of Felen, and I think the value in this source book, again, is really that it stats out a lot of different kinds of troops for you. The rules themselves do give you a nice little algorithm to price out and try to balance your figures. But if you don't want to go through all that nonsense and all that hassle, you can just use these as your inspiration. So as you can see, and then again, if we just take a look at this bestiary, let's real quick, I haven't been able to yo-ho-ho this, so what do we got? We got tigers and war horses, just getting a feel for it. Something called a zephyr hound, unicorn. All right, we've got some pretty girl art. That's always a bonus in my book. She seems a little too covered up for my taste, but do that. It's 1990. We'd already started to get a little bit prudish by then. This thing is called an Oranshi, but again, it's probably an OTUG. It might be a shambling mound. We've got flying beasts, fell beasts. Ooh, right. So straight from Middle Earth role playing, and then invaders and assailers. We've got ratmen, a classic. Here's another map. Invader and Assailer ranges. Yeah, fairly detailed world. Again, I'm not going to go into any great detail, but we've got dragon men, we've got scorpion men, somebody get the Rock on the phone, wolf men, all kinds of good stuff. So there you go. There's a bestiary. We'll take a look at that in a future video, I'm sure. We'll use that as guidance. So here's the meat of the issue, the rules book. The year is 1990. They're trying to get people into the hobby. This includes a terrain and painting manual. So here's nice little pictures of 1990s glasses and I wonder who that guy is. I wonder if that's old Mr. Fenlon himself. God rest his soul. Pray for him, would you? So our rules book is going to take an iterative approach, if you will. And as you can see here, you've got a basic game, an intermediate game, and a standard game. And then you've got a whole bunch of optional rules that you can roll in as you so desire. In our appendix, we've got point costs, we've got designing your own scenarios, options, checklist. So this is the stuff. I actually want to go to the very end because look at this, conversions from Fantasy Hero, D&D, and Rollmaster. The idea here is, look at this, in order to design, where is it? This section provides notes for converting statistics from other systems to Bladestorm stats. So if you're playing D&D and you run up against a mass battle game and you don't realize that AD&D was designed with that in mind, this will allow you to run that 100 figure on 100 figure. I gotta be honest with you, I don't think the game works well once you top out above 30 to 40 figures. And in fact, they'll tell you that. So it's really a large skirmish game, as we'll see. And I guess this is a good time to point out the reason this game breaks down once you get near the triple digits is because of the Bladestorm. The continent of Felen is a post-apocalyptic wasteland, as all the best fantasy settings are. And so there was like some dark magics that were wielded to protect the continent from any kind of invasion. And it's these Bladestorms. Anytime a large number of men get together, and I use men loosely, obviously, dwarves, elves, orcs, whatever. Even, look, I think is that an elf or a girl? Probably a girl, I don't know. Anyway, the point is, whenever you get too much bloodshed, too much negative energy on one place, these Bladestorms appear and just wreck everybody's stuff. So in the game, one of the things that they have is at a certain point, you start rolling 3d6. And if you roll above like a highish number, then a Bladestorm will appear and it'll start moving across the table and it'll just like start slaughtering everybody. Kind of similar, I think, to the Stargrave, where you've got that like shot clock, and if you wait too long, the big baddies show up. But it's kind of an interesting mechanic in that it provides a game-ending state. Let me see if I can find where the templates are for that. But it doesn't completely end the game, right? So it actually happens in a couple of different ways. That Bladestorm can appear on one side of the table and then start moving. And so here's your rose diagram. And it can start sweeping across. And everything on this side of the table is going to get blasted out of existence. So the battle gets like shoehorned down into one side. It can also be a ring that you may be able to run through it and still survive, right? And then it's got these tornado Bladestorms that will start drifting around the battlefield. So you got to hustle to stay ahead of it, but that can happen. And that's really, so there you go. That's kind of the ending of the scenario, not scenario, but the setting. So now let's take a look at the rules. And the rules are rather interesting because if we just look at the basic rules, essentially every figure, let me grab a couple. All right, I got 2 figures here. This is a game for basically Dark Ages, so I got a Dark Age looking guy with a nice big shield, and he is going to be going up against an elf with a 2-handed sword. As I said, what we're going to do is we're going to find somebody that has the right kind of stats, and so here we have Mightian, Lord of the Dark Runners. Let's just go through this one at a time. Move rate, pretty obvious. He moves 6.5 inches. These 3 numbers after the slash are for when you're moving through light, medium, and heavy woods, if you will, or any kind of clutter or terrain. They do provide both normal and European measurements. See here, centimeters. And then morale score, which you're trying to beat this, roll under on 3d6. But if you fail by 5 or more, you're completely out. When do you roll? Well, hey, looky here. See, this guy's got a defense. He's got 26 endurance. That's hit points. When you lose half your hit points, so at number 14, you cross off this 14th box, he's got to roll. And he's probably going to make it, right? Because his morale. Oh, actually, think about this. He's got a pretty low morale. He's going to run off because he's like eternal. He doesn't want to die. Then we have defense. When he's attacked, this is the target number. He doesn't have a shield bonus. Chain armor, this is damage reduction. When you take damage, reduce it by 3. Maneuver and resistance, these are for magic. And I got to be honest, I don't know what maneuver is. It probably has something to do with when you're doing mass battles. And I'll show you here in a little bit that you can put guys into single like rank and flank units. One of the things I think is interesting about this game, you can go back and forth from rank and flank to skirmish. And it's much more flexible than something like Dragon Rampant, if you will. Anyway, what I really wanted to key in on here is he's got a 2-handed sword. He's going to be rolling 2d6, plus a d10, plus 3, and then his damage is high plus low plus 2. So he runs up, and he's not going to shoot because he doesn't really have much of a bow. So he runs up on his opponent, and he says, "Have at thee," and he gives a big mighty chop. Well, his opponent is, I guess, a Brule guard. Why don't you say human guard Brule? Like, I get that you got all these factions. I ain't reading 200 points of lore to figure out that the Brule guards are humans or orcs or whatever. But this is pretty good, right? Because he's got his shield bonus and he's got 10, so he's not looking so hot, right? We got a hero going up against a rank and flank. And when you buy these guys, they come in group blocks of 8. So here you go. And they're mostly going to be skirmishers, but they may, lock together, and we'll talk about that later, like I said. It says it mace, but whatever. He's not going to attack. I'm just doing the elf attack. So we got to beat a 9. And a shield bonus means that we really have to beat a 12 because we're going one-on-one. Now, the shield is interesting because you have to worry about flanks. If our elf had a friend come in on this flank, because it's on the sword arm of our human, he doesn't get the +3 to his defense. Over here, he might, but you only get to use it for one attack. And we're going to go with the attack for the big boy here. So remember, I said that the attack roll is going to be 2d6 plus a d10. And as I said, we're going up against a defense of 12. Guy's only got 10 hit points. So it's just one roll for both 2-hit and damage. We roll these 3, and by the way, before I do, this is called the death die. If it comes up a 1, you automatically hit. So even if we're trying to roll, we got a 3d6, and we're trying to attack a guy who's got a defense of 20. Oh, there. He's got a defense of 20. Normally, we would never be able to hit him, but we have a 1 in 6 chance of hitting every time. Speeds play. It means that you always have a chance of getting that lucky shot off. You can always go full bard with the black arrow and maybe take out that dragon. But as it is, we're rolling 2d6 plus a d10. Then we're going to add 2, and we are going to see if we can beat a 12 or not. So a 2, 3, and 4 is not going to do it. Sorry, Mr. Elf Hero. That is a 9, which is not enough. But what happens if we rolled a 9 a different way? Let's take a look at this. So I rolled a 9, which is not enough to get through the defense of this guy. But, oh, whoopsie, I got a 1 on my death die. That means we go to the damage. And remember the damage that this weapon does. It's already contained in here. The damage is high plus low plus 2. That means you take the highest of these 3 dice, you add the lowest of these 3 dice, and you add 2 to that, and that's your total score. Well, if we rolled a 6, 4, and a 1, that would mean... Actually, let's call this a 5, 4, and a 1. This is interesting. Where's my 5? Oh, you're not cooperating. There you go. So here we rolled a 10. We still didn't hit, but we did hit. So we would add the high plus the low for 6, plus 2 is 8. Then we subtract 3 damage resistance because this guy has chain on. That's what the negative 3 is. So this 8 becomes 5 points of damage, and he doesn't have to make a morale check. But, we said that we rolled a pair of 4s and a 1. That means our high is a tie. This now becomes 11 points of damage because both of these are high. If we had rolled that, then we would have done 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8 points of damage because the lows were tied. So you have the opportunity here. You know, if we had rolled, oh boy, it's a message, it's a number of the beast. Here we go, 665, okay, let's say. This guy is doing a tremendous amount of damage. He's doing 19 points of damage, even with the -3. 13 points will kill him outright. But as we said, no. We did 8 points of damage, leaving him with just 2. So now we have to check his morale. And the way we check his morale is by rolling 3d6 for everybody. His morale score is an 8. So we are trying to roll an 8 or better on 3d6. If we're good, he's good. He can continue to fight. If we fail, he becomes disrupted. So look at that. Oh, geez, we rolled a 9, so he's fine. He's brave enough to go toe-to-toe against scary Mr. Knife Ears. If we had rolled a little bit lower, we rolled a 7. Now he's disrupted. Nothing happens immediately. Remember, this is our elf turn. On our hero's turn, because he is disrupted, and we drop a disrupted marker down, he has to move at least 1 inch away. Any attacks that he makes are at -5. There's a few more wrinkles, but that's the general gist of it. Not only that, but after he's done moving, you have to make a recovery check for him. And this time it gets even more dangerous, because if he fails this morale check while he's disrupted, he says, I'm giggity gone. He does not want any more of that Knife Ears. If he rolls above his score, so here we have an 11, okay, he's still disrupted, because in order to remove the disruption marker, he needs to roll a 13. So that's where the 5-up comes into play. It's very hard to remove that disrupted marker, but he can still be around. He can still be a threat. And here's one of the things that I don't really understand and probably won't until we actually start to play this game. Do you move everybody and then just say, okay, now that we're done with movement, bow fire and all that, now we go through and check all the morale? Or do I move and check each one at a time? I think it might depend kind of on the situation. But in my brain, it makes more sense. Just do all your movement and then do that. A closer reading of the rules, I didn't even realize that was a thing until I kind of started walking through it. So that's kind of the basics of it. Very efficient game, right? You just roll these. Kadoosh, you just one die roll and you get both. Okay, so you can look at this already, right? We know it's going to be a hit because he's got a 14 already, even without the +2. We know it's going to be high plus low. That's 10, 12, -3, 9 points of damage. He's only got 1 left. And interestingly, doesn't matter how damaged you are anytime you're under half. We rolled a 12. He's fine. So he has to run away, and then we roll again, and with the 3 ones, he says, I'm done. 1 hit point is not enough to get me to stick around. They are not paying me enough for this. So that's the general gist of the rules. Very similar to Silent Death if you've played that. But there's a couple of other things I want to go over. We talked about the difference about how flanking works, and you get bonuses if you attack a flank, if you attack somebody from behind. There is a rule, so if I'm attacking you, boom, so I do my movement. So our elf guy runs up. Our hero's facing the other way. At the start of the melee, you can turn to face whichever combatant you want. So he may want to point his shield at the ogre. He probably wants to point it at the big dang hero, right? But be that as it may, you get that 1 free rotation. And this is why you need to have a 2 double up if you want to be able to get that rear attack bonus. There's some other interesting things. When you are in like heavy woods, if somebody's shooting at you, your defense goes up by 3. If you're behind a stone wall, your defense will go up. All that stuff is pretty basic. I'm not going to belabor it, but there is one interesting thing I really like in this game. If you're standing in a stream, your defense goes down. You're at -2. So our boy here, our human, if he gets stuck wet-footed, then he's on the slippery rocks. He can't move around as well. He's easier to hit. I think that's really clever, and I don't know that I've seen that in any other games. It's probably out there, and somebody's probably gonna fill us in here in the comments. I wouldn't be surprised, and I'd actually kind of appreciate it. But I thought that was kind of neat. Everybody that's involved in the combat gets to attack, right? So we do have this kind of rank and flank, and there's some interesting little rules in this where you can start out kind of in loose skirmish formation, and then you can huddle up, and you don't have to take everybody. You can just take 9 of these guys to huddle up and have the other 6 still in loose formation, and that affects your defense against shooting. Right? It's easier to shoot at a massed block than it is at a loose block. When you're in a massed block, our individual skirmishers can move in any direction, turn however they want. These guys have to wheel, so that's another thing. There are certain other effects that help or hinder you when you're in these formations. And I like I said earlier, I don't know that I've seen a game that did this breaking apart and like building and ripping apart units as smoothly as this game does, and the difference in the abilities that you get is interesting, right? So here's our combatant maneuver, right? Where that comes in, but again, these are optional rules, and we'll get to those in a future video. For today, I'm just going to point out that they're here. I'm looking for right. So here's our deal. You can change formations, 90 degrees, wheel. We all know what that means, and then. I really did want to. So maximum legal separation, you got to be within 1 base width. In Fine 90s formation, they are really concerned about base sizes. We are here, these poor benighted figures of the past. If only they knew how little base size means, right? It suggests a 1x1 base size for miniatures representing human combatants, and then they give you very specific. And it's just like, bruh, I ain't rebasing my figures. We all kind of know what a medium-sized figure is. We all know what a large-sized figure is. It's fine. Measuring distances. What do we got here? String when they're not in a straight line. Yeah, do any of you guys actually use string for that, or do you just grab your ruler? Like I do. My opponent doesn't mind. I just do like that. I mean, you could do. I don't even do that. I just say, okay, here's my 1, and I'm gonna run kinda to there's 8 inches. Okay. Right? It's fine. So sometimes some of these guys, they get a little too bound up in such things. But as I was saying, I really wanted to find the terrain types. Here we go, right? So lots of different terrain types. It's a good game. So here we go. Medium woods, 3/4 movement. Heavy woods, half movement. And then, now that I think about it, I don't know that I've seen any rules for mounted combatants. I guess the Bladestorm really hates horses. Just chops them up, turns them into dog food like that, I guess. But we have, Goblin Guard units, so we'll kind of take a look. If you have any questions about this game or anything that I've talked about here that doesn't really make a whole lot of sense, right? So for the optional for morale, that's the one thing I wanted to talk about. Leaders are very powerful in this game, but they're very Varied. Oh, they vary wildly. That's probably a better way to put it. Because leaders actually have 4 different stats that they can help you with. All right. And they could give you a bonus to morale, which is pretty obvious what it means. When you roll the dice, you add that bonus. But they might just give you a bonus to missile fire. They might give you a bonus to melee. Like, I'm not particularly braver when I'm fighting with this guy, but I fight harder, right? And then the last one is, what is the last one? What am I asking you for? I'm the one with the book. Here you go. Morale, melee, missile, defense, and influence range. So defense is the one I was forgetting. He's really good at getting you to find the best rocks to hide behind. And then influence range is just like, how far can he yell at you and still have you listen? So that's how leaders work. And of course, they're probably going to have more hit points, and they're probably going to be a little better. They may have a +3 to their attack. They may have a stronger defense. More hit points is probably going to be the best thing for them, though, so they can stick around. And then there are these like combat maneuvers and all kinds of good stuff in here. So I think that's about it for now. An interesting look into the state of the art in 1990, like late 80s, early 90s, and kind of I think it's a hidden gem, a forgotten gem. There are a few websites and a few forum posts talking about this. And as I said, if you are intrigued by this game and you don't want to get yourself a box set, what am I going to do? How am I going to put this on my shelf, then you can always just get the 2nd edition. It's available. I'll try to remember to put a link down in the description, but I don't know. I always forget. And trust me, it has nothing to do with the algorithm, DM. I don't care. I just want to help you guys out. So maybe somebody will throw that in the comments for me if I forget. And go ahead and chastise me, because I love it. I love it when you guys beat me up and correct me. Just, do it kindly, right? That's all I got for you. Let me just close out by saying if my voice sounded a little off today, then I've been fighting off some of the creeping crud here in the early days of 2025. But I'm glad to have you along, and I hope you appreciate this bonus episode. Don't get used to 3 episodes every week. Time is still as precious as ever, but when I can, I'll throw up something like this because, gosh darn it, I like you. Not only that, I'm praying for you.